So we just proved that God is the good. And the reason why God is not separate from God's goodness is because if God were separate from God's goodness, then God wouldn't be true happiness, because there would be something above God which God follows. And so therefore God is the good. And we saw that that goodness is this absolute oneness. And so that therefore God cannot have any parts. God's unity and God's self, God's ordering is this absolute unity. God is the good and not just good. So now, though, we know that everything has some level of goodness. Insofar as it exists, it has goodness. And therefore, we understand what evil is. Evil is just the lack of unity or disorder. And so therefore, evil isn't a something, it is a lack of something. And we understand this because if we would define darkness, darkness is not a something. Darkness is the lack of light. And so therefore, just as light is to darkness, so goodness is to evil. Evil is the malfunctioning or the disunity within a unified system, that which brings it more toward non-existence. So now what we want to prove is not only that everything is good and that evil is not strictly a something, but that everything insofar as it exists and therefore is good is governed by the good and indeed gets its existence from the good and God. And so Boethius, through Lady Philosophy, now wants to give us another proof for the existence of God, but a proof that will reveal to us that the universe is indeed well governed. So we start with something that again is common sense, because all proofs have to start with the obvious, something that we can't question. So think about anything that exists. It has a unity and order to it. Order and unity are the same because anything that's ordered has a harmony or a working together of parts and therefore is some type of unity. And so we think of things in the normal everyday world. For example, this pen. This pen can lose its unity, it can lose its order. I can step on it and crush it if I was heavy enough. And so therefore, because it can lose its unity, it's not absolutely one with its unity, and therefore we can conceive of it not having it, which means what? That it didn't have to have the unity or order that it had, which means that it needs a cause for the unity. Something must have given this pen its unity and therefore brought it into existence. So whatever can lose its unity or order needs something other than itself to put it into it. Now, when we look at the universe as a whole, we see that the universe is a single orderly system. That's why we call it the universe. Uni meaning unity, verse meaning diversity. In other words, what we see in the universe is a cosmos, is a single system of a unity in diversity. But how do we know if the universe is losing its unity? Well, during the time of Boethius, they didn't have the scientific observations to back this up, but Boethius and others observed that the universe consists of many things that not only attract each other, but repel each other. And what's interesting is these things that repel each other, water and fire, oil and water, they're still in the same single system and operate according to specific rules or laws. And so therefore, even though you have these opposites that would naturally repel each other, they come together to form a single system. And since they're opposites, they don't naturally belong together. And so therefore, Boethius conjectured, they don't have their unity. They're not absolutely unified, naturally speaking. So therefore, something had to bring them together. We, through modern science, actually can prove that this is the case, because we know that the universe is evolving not to greater and greater levels of order, but actually to greater and greater levels of disorder. This is called the second law of thermodynamics. The first law is the law of conservation, which says that the totality of any closed system is such that it can neither matter energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It always conserves the same amount of matter and energy. But that first law doesn't tell us what happens to that energy and matter. That's what the second law states. And the second law states that the total amount of matter and energy will always go toward a more disorderly form. And so therefore the universe is evolving not to greater and greater levels of order, but is slowly but surely losing its orderly energy, its stored energy. And this is called entropy. And so the universe is evolving toward entropy. Well, if it's evolving toward entropy, then it's losing its order. If it's losing its order, then it can lose its order. And if it can lose its order, then according to one, it follows that it needs something other than itself to have given it its orderly existence. Thus, it follows that the universe got its order from something else. Well, whatever else it got its order from, either itself needed something to give it its order, or it didn't. But imagine we had this infinite chain of things that are borrowing order from something else. Then since nothing had the order originally, then it follows that the order doesn't exist at all, that everything is borrowing and there's no original owner of order. Just like borrowing money. If you remember in our first lecture on Aristotle, not everyone could be a borrower. There had to be someone who originally lent it. So it follows that there had to be ultimately something that had the order in itself, and that order isn't different than it, and therefore it's absolutely one. So it follows that there is an ultimate source of the unity in the universe that is absolutely one, a first cause. And if you remember from the cosmological argument of Aristotle, this being is a first cause. And that this first cause, being absolutely simple and absolutely the source of all order and therefore all existence, would have to be God. So, therefore, it follows that the absolute one, the good, is the source of everything, the existence of everything. God is the creator. And since God is the good, then the good is the creator and the source of the existence of everything. It is not simply that God had the power to create and created by his power. It's rather that God's goodness is the source of everything. And therefore, everything gets its existence from the good, since God is one with God's goodness. But there's something else we need to understand about the universe. Not only is everything's existence good and come from the good, but everything acts, everything moves, everything does things. That's part of the notion of existence, is the notion that things have effects, that things move toward things, that things have tendencies. So if we were to look at the laws that govern the universe and the way things act, we can come up with one universal rule. And that is the rule that everything seeks to preserve its existence, from the simplest thing like a rock to human beings and higher beings. Think about that rock. Even though the rock doesn't naturally move, if you kick the rock, it'll kick back. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Which means what? Which means that rock strives to maintain its unity. Nothing willingly goes out of existence. Therefore, everything is striving to maintain its existence, either through some type of orderly system or just simply by keeping together. Nothing willingly disintegrates. Therefore, everything strives by maintain its existence. Notice the word strive. Strive is action and reaction. And we already saw that unity is existence, and unity is the good. So it follows that what runs everything is the good. Every action is motivated by the striving of everything to maintain and achieve the good. But who is the good? God. So it follows, therefore, that the universe is run by the good. The universe is created by the good, and everything in the universe, its ultimate explanation is goodness. Therefore, the universe is well governed. Think about that. To say the universe is well governed, to say any state is well governed, is to simply state that everything that happens in that state is a function of and follows from goodness. There is nothing that actually exists, nothing that moves or has being that's not being run by goodness. Therefore, Boethius, your first question is answered. If you remember back in book 1, he looks around him and says, how can we say the universe is well governed when all of this evil flourishes and those who are good suffer? And what Lady Philosophy has now proved to him is that even though you may not see specifically how the good runs everything, if you follow through on common sense and understand the nature of existence and the nature of true happiness and the nature of God and how God created everything and how everything runs by means of the good, then we can prove to you logically through reason alone that even though your senses don't experience this, the universe is supremely well governed. But now that still leaves us with the experiential problem of evil. Theoretically, we can say, yes, even though I don't see it, the universe is well governed. But why does it seem like it's not? Why does it seem as if the evil actually runs the universe and not the good? Because the evil are in power and the good lose their power on earth. Why do the evil dominate the good? Why does it seem actually that there's injustice when you seem to have proven that everything should be running correctly and rightly? So why does it seem that the evil are rewarded and the good punished? That's the topic of our next series of lectures. How we can take this theoretical and show how, practically speaking, it leads to an answer to Boethius's question of, am I in a good situation right now? Has God treated me justly? Or is it truly a universe that is so cruel that even though my reason tells me one thing, my experience tells me everything else?